Prejudice and respect are two concepts that often live side by side in the human experience, sometimes clashing in ways that expose deeply rooted biases. When considering the setting of a hospital, a place where lives are literally on the line and decisions made in seconds determine outcomes for patients, one might expect that professionalism, empathy, and teamwork overshadow personal biases. However, reality often demonstrates that prejudice still surfaces in environments where it least belongs, shaping interactions and distorting the recognition of true merit. In the context of the story about a black nurse being insulted by a doctor who later discovers she is the chief of surgery, the theme of prejudice and respect becomes a profound lens to examine not just interpersonal dynamics but also broader societal issues. Prejudice here refers to the preconceived notions and assumptions made without evidence, typically rooted in stereotypes or systemic inequalities. In many professional fields, especially medicine, hierarchies are clearly defined, and authority is expected to be respected. Yet the nurse-doctor interaction highlights how prejudice overrides professional norms when assumptions about race, gender, and role take center stage. The doctor in the story insults the nurse, assuming that her position is one of lesser importance, failing to recognize that appearances can be deceiving. This behavior reflects a common reality in workplaces, the inclination to judge capability and authority based not on actions or qualifications but on stereotypes. The black nurse, in this narrative, symbolizes not just an individual professional but also the struggles of countless individuals who face underestimation because of visible markers of identity. Respect, by contrast, is not simply about politeness but about acknowledgement of worth, recognition of contribution, and validation of professional authority. Respect in a hospital setting means trusting the expertise of colleagues regardless of background, showing humility in the presence of someone with greater knowledge or experience, and fostering an environment where collaboration thrives. Respect is not granted arbitrarily, it is often earned through competence and leadership. In this story, the chief of surgery embodies respect because of her years of training, her responsibility for the surgical department, and her authority over critical medical decisions. When the doctor finally realizes who she truly is, the moment becomes a stark confrontation between prejudice and respect, forcing him to reconcile his assumptions with reality. To understand this theme deeply, one must look at how prejudice works silently in professional spaces. Hospitals are microcosms of society. While they are meant to serve all equally, the professionals within them are not immune to the unconscious biases cultivated by culture and history. Race, for example, has long influenced perceptions of competence, particularly in fields dominated by certain demographics. When a black woman enters a room in scrubs, there is often an assumption, particularly from those who cling to stereotypes, that she must be a nurse rather than a surgeon. Nursing is itself an honorable profession requiring immense skill, but when this assumption is made not out of observation but out of stereotype, prejudice is at play. The doctor in the story embodies this prejudice, seeing only what he expects rather than recognizing the individuality and qualifications of the person before him. Gender compounds the issue further. Historically, surgery has been male-dominated, and many still subconsciously expect the authoritative figure in an operating theater to be male. For a black woman to hold the position of chief of surgery challenges not just one but two entrenched stereotypes. The insult delivered by the doctor is not only directed at her presumed role but also rooted in disbelief that someone who looks like her could possibly hold the highest surgical authority. The insult, then, becomes symbolic of the struggles faced by minorities in professional hierarchies, where they are constantly required to prove their worth twice over, first by demonstrating their skills and second by dismantling the biases of others. Respect in this framework is transformative. It is not just about treating someone kindly, it is about fundamentally re-evaluating one's assumptions and recognizing the authority and dignity of another human being. When the doctor discovers the truth, that the woman he insulted is the chief of surgery, the respect that follows is not optional but demanded by the reality of her position. This moment highlights how fragile prejudice is when confronted by undeniable competence and authority. Respect, in this sense, becomes a corrective force, reminding individuals that leadership and capability are not dictated by superficial traits but by training, responsibility, and results. There is also a moral lesson embedded in this theme. Respect should not only emerge after credentials are revealed. True respect requires seeing others without the filter of prejudice, acknowledging that every person, regardless of role, contributes to the functioning of a hospital. Nurses, for instance, form the backbone of patient care, and insulting a nurse reflects not only disrespect toward an individual but toward an entire profession essential to healthcare. The doctor's insult is doubly problematic. It diminishes both the perceived identity of the person and the value of the profession he assumes she belongs to. When the truth comes out, he is forced not only to recognize her as chief of surgery but also to confront his disregard for the role of nurses. Respect, therefore, must transcend titles and emerge from an appreciation of shared human dignity and professional contribution. The dynamic between prejudice and respect also resonates beyond the hospital. It mirrors social realities where people of color, women, or individuals from marginalized communities often find themselves underestimated in workplaces, classrooms, or even casual encounters. They are spoken over, dismissed, or subjected to microaggressions until their qualifications or achievements become undeniable. The moment of revelation, whether it be discovering that the quiet woman in the meeting is actually the project lead or that the person underestimated in an academic setting holds a doctorate, becomes a powerful reversal of roles. Such revelations expose the absurdity of prejudice and elevate the importance of respect. The story of the black nurse who is actually the chief of surgery is one such reversal, crafted to highlight how fragile and unfounded prejudice truly is when faced with the truth of someone's accomplishments. There is also a psychological dimension worth exploring. Prejudice often arises from insecurity and the need to affirm one's superiority in social hierarchies. By insulting someone perceived as lower in status, individuals reinforce their own sense of dominance. The doctor's insult, then, may be less about the nurse herself and more about his own need to assert authority. Respect, conversely, requires humility, an acknowledgement that one does not know everything and that others may hold greater knowledge or authority. When the truth surfaces, the doctor experiences a forced humility, his prejudice collapsing under the weight of reality. This shift illustrates the power of respect to dismantle arrogance and replace it with acknowledgement of merit. One of the most compelling aspects of this theme is how it redefines power. Prejudice seeks to disempower others by diminishing their worth, while respect restores power by recognizing authority and competence. The black chief of surgery, in this story, does not need to demand respect verbally, her position and capability command it naturally. Her calm endurance of the insult, followed by the revelation of her true identity, demonstrates that real authority does not need to shout, it simply is. This quiet but powerful reversal illustrates how respect, once given, carries more weight than prejudice ever could. It also reinforces the idea that leadership rooted in dignity and competence eventually outshines arrogance rooted in bias. In broader cultural contexts, stories like this serve as allegories for systemic change. They remind audiences that prejudice, though pervasive, can be challenged through excellence in leadership. They also call for a cultural shift where respect is not conditional upon revelation of authority but is the default mode of interaction. In a hospital, this means respecting every role, from janitors and orderlies to nurses and surgeons, because each contributes to the well-being of patients. In society, it means resisting the impulse to judge based on appearance, identity, or assumption, and instead fostering respect for the individual before us. This theme also reveals the emotional weight carried by those who are targets of prejudice. For the black chief of surgery, being insulted is not just a momentary offense but part of a lifelong pattern of underestimation. Every instance of prejudice adds to the burden, yet her continued excellence in her role demonstrates resilience. Her ability to rise above the insult and let her position speak for itself is an act of quiet strength, one that underscores the triumph of respect over prejudice. The doctor, in turn, represents those who must learn humility the hard way, confronting their own biases when reality contradicts their assumptions. Thus, the theme of prejudice and respect is not a simple contrast but a dynamic struggle between two forces, one that diminishes and one that uplifts, one that divides and one that unites. The hospital setting magnifies this struggle, showing how prejudice can fracture teamwork and jeopardize respect, but also how respect, once restored, can rebuild collaboration and trust. In the end, this theme is not just about a single interaction between a doctor and a nurse but about the larger societal lesson that prejudice is always fragile in the face of truth, while respect is enduring, transformative, and necessary for human progress. The concept of a plot twist has always been a powerful tool in storytelling, and in this particular story, the twist lies in the revelation of authority. A doctor, operating under his own assumptions, insults a woman he perceives as a nurse, not realizing that she is in fact the chief of surgery. The force of this twist does not come only from the revelation itself but from the way it disrupts expectations, confronts prejudice, and reshapes the power dynamics between the characters. By examining the twist of authority in depth, one can see how it operates on multiple levels, personal, professional, and symbolic. At the personal level, the doctor believes he is addressing someone lower in the hospital hierarchy. His tone, his words, and his demeanor carry the arrogance of assumed superiority. He does not pause to ask who she is, what her role might be, or what her qualifications are. He takes the shortcut of assumption, guided by stereotypes and his own inflated sense of status. To him, the woman is not a peer or superior but an obstacle, someone to dismiss. The insult he delivers is both an attack on her perceived professional position and an assertion of his dominance. In his mind, the interaction is clear: he is the authority, she is subordinate. This personal miscalculation becomes the fertile ground for the eventual reversal. When the truth emerges, that she is the chief of surgery, the ground beneath his confidence shifts abruptly. The insult, once a declaration of power, becomes a glaring mistake. The very person he attempted to belittle is not only his equal but his superior, someone who holds authority not just over him but over the entire surgical department. The twist in authority is thus both humiliating and instructive for him. The sudden reversal forces him to confront the fragility of his assumptions and the danger of arrogance. In this way, the plot twist is not merely dramatic for the sake of story, it functions as a corrective mechanism for the character's flawed worldview. On a professional level, the twist underscores the rigid hierarchies that exist in hospitals. Medicine, perhaps more than most professions, is structured in layers of authority. Students defer to residents, residents defer to attending physicians, and attending physicians defer to department heads. The chain of command is essential in emergencies, ensuring decisions are followed quickly and without debate. However, this same hierarchy can breed arrogance when individuals assume their place within it guarantees their superiority over others. The doctor's insult reflects this misuse of hierarchy. He assumes that because he perceives her as a nurse, he outranks her. The revelation of her role as chief of surgery destabilizes this misuse by reaffirming the true hierarchy. Authority, the twist makes clear, is not about assumption but about established responsibility and recognized expertise. This revelation carries symbolic power as well. In many stories, authority is hidden or underestimated until a climactic moment when it is revealed. Such a narrative device reminds audiences that authority is not always obvious and that appearances often deceive. In the case of this story, the chief of surgery's authority is concealed not because she hides it but because prejudice blinds others from seeing it. The twist becomes symbolic of how marginalized individuals are often overlooked or underestimated in real life, only to later prove their strength, leadership, and capability. It delivers a lesson to both characters and readers: do not assume who holds authority based on stereotypes, for authority may reside where one least expects it. The plot twist of authority also exposes the dynamics of respect and humiliation. Before the revelation, the doctor feels empowered, dismissing the woman in a way he would not dare with someone he knew outranked him. His insult carries no fear of repercussion because he believes she lacks authority. The revelation flips this entirely. Suddenly, his words are not only disrespectful but reckless, delivered to the one person who holds the greatest authority over his professional standing. What was once arrogance becomes embarrassment, and what was once dismissal becomes groveling. The twist demonstrates how authority changes the meaning of interactions retroactively. Words that seemed casual or even acceptable within a presumed hierarchy become insubordinate and offensive once the real hierarchy is exposed. Another important aspect of this twist lies in its psychological impact on both characters. For the doctor, it is a moment of shock, forcing him to reevaluate his behavior and confront his bias. He is likely to remember the humiliation of that moment for a long time, and it may change how he approaches future interactions. For the chief of surgery, the revelation is less about proving herself and more about letting her position speak for itself. She does not need to defend her worth, the structure of the hospital already validates it. The plot twist, therefore, allows her to maintain dignity while teaching a lesson without raising her voice. This quiet assertion of authority demonstrates the strength of true leadership. It does not need to shout or boast, it simply exists. The dramatic weight of this twist also relies on the element of surprise. Surprise in storytelling is powerful because it destabilizes the audience's expectations in the same way it destabilizes the character's assumptions. When readers hear the insult, they share in the frustration and injustice of the moment, silently wishing the doctor would recognize his mistake. When the twist comes and the truth is revealed, the satisfaction is immense. Justice is restored not through confrontation but through revelation, and the authority of the chief of surgery becomes undeniable. This moment of narrative catharsis is what makes the story memorable and impactful. It delivers not just a reversal of roles but a broader statement about humility, respect, and the perils of assumption. What makes the twist even richer is its capacity to echo beyond the immediate story. In many professional and social contexts, individuals misjudge others based on superficial markers, failing to recognize hidden authority or experience. The twist becomes a metaphor for real-world situations in which people underestimate colleagues, employees, or even strangers, only to be surprised by their expertise or leadership. It suggests that authority does not always wear a badge that others can instantly see, sometimes it is revealed only when circumstances demand it. The lesson, therefore, is to approach all interactions with respect, regardless of assumptions, because one never knows the authority or experience the other person carries. The structural beauty of this plot twist lies in its simplicity. It is not built on elaborate deception or complex narrative devices but on a straightforward reversal of expectations. The doctor assumes he is speaking to a subordinate, the revelation proves he was speaking to his superior. This simplicity makes the twist universally relatable and immediately powerful. Readers do not need extensive backstory or exposition to understand the weight of the moment. The contrast between insult and revelation is clear enough to carry the entire message. Simplicity here becomes strength, allowing the twist to resonate not only as a plot device but as a moral lesson. At the same time, the twist also carries emotional weight because of the context in which it occurs. A hospital is a place where life and death decisions are made, where professionalism should be paramount, and where arrogance can have dire consequences. To see prejudice and insult in such a setting feels particularly jarring, amplifying the satisfaction of the eventual reversal. The revelation of authority in this context does not merely restore professional order but also reaffirms the values that should govern medicine: respect, collaboration, and humility in the face of expertise. The twist is not only about one doctor and one chief of surgery, it is about the reminder that in the pursuit of healing, arrogance and prejudice have no place. The lesson carried by this twist is not just about authority but about the recognition of hidden power. Authority is not always loud, visible, or self-declared. Sometimes it is quiet, patient, and revealed only at the right moment. The chief of surgery embodies this kind of authority, allowing her position to reveal itself rather than demanding recognition. The doctor's humiliation, therefore, is not orchestrated by her but by his own arrogance colliding with reality. The twist,